I know I've got to be. I mean, it's just on that stage. I was watching my journey to that point. I was getting emotional.
What happens when a chicken catcher from Kentucky walks onto the biggest talent stage in America and wins? What happens when $1 million, a Las Vegas headline slot, and overnight global fame land in the lap of a man who just wanted to pay his bills? For most people, that's a fairy tale ending. But for Kevin Skinner, Season 4 winner of America's Got Talent, it was just the beginning of a story nobody was supposed to find out about. Now, at 52 years old, the silence is finally breaking, and let me tell you, the truth is something else entirely. Who is Kevin Skinner? Before we get to the $1 million check, the standing ovations, and the Las Vegas lights, let's talk about where Kevin Skinner actually came from. Because this is the part the highlight reels always skip over. And trust me, this is where the real story lives. Kevin Skinner was born and raised in Graves County, Kentucky. Not exactly a place that screams showbiz. This is a man who, before he ever set foot on the AGT stage, made his living catching chickens. Yes, you heard that right. He worked at a chicken farm, physically catching live chickens for processing. It's hard, unglamorous, back-breaking work. The kind of work that doesn't come with applause, or a green room or a stylist touching up your hair before you go on. And yet, here was this quiet, unassuming man from rural Kentucky. A man who had almost no formal music training, no industry connections, no manager, no publicist, no carefully crafted image, walking into one of the most watched talent competitions on American television. Kevin Skinner was not a polished product. He was the real thing. And in 2009, America was hungry for exactly that. Now, those who knew Kevin before the fame will tell you this was a man who had always had music in him. He'd been playing guitar and singing in small local venues, at county fairs, at church events. Music wasn't a career aspiration for Kevin so much as it was a lifeline, something that made the hard days softer, something that connected him to something bigger than catching chickens and paying rent. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't building a brand. He was just a man who could sing. And somehow, the whole world was about to find out. But here's what everyone wants to know. What actually happened when Kevin Skinner walked out in front of those judges? Was it really as electric as people say? Or has time made the legend a little larger than the reality? Let's paint the picture, because context is everything here. The year is 2009. America is deep in a recession. People are losing jobs, losing homes, losing hope. The country is exhausted. And into that moment walks Kevin Skinner, wearing a simple shirt, no theatrical entrance, no backup dancers, just a man, a guitar, and something raw bubbling just beneath the surface. He tells the judges he's a chicken catcher from Kentucky. You can practically hear the audience mentally writing him off. Piers Morgan, never known for his patience with anyone who doesn't immediately command the room, looks like he's already composing his dismissal in his head. And then Kevin opens his mouth. The song Kevin chose for his audition was If Tomorrow Never Comes, the Garth Brooks classic about love, loss, and the urgency of telling the people in your life how much they mean to you before it's too late. And when Kevin sang it, something shifted in that room. His voice was not what anyone expected. It was deep, textured, and aching with sincerity. It wasn't technically perfect, it wasn't Broadway polished, but it was real in a way that very few voices you'll ever hear on a competition stage manage to be. The audience, which had been murmuring skeptically just moments before, fell completely silent, then erupted. Sharon Osbourne, a woman who has heard everything in the music industry, was visibly moved. Even Piers Morgan, Mr. Cynicism himself, could not deny what he was hearing. The standing ovation was immediate and thunderous. Kevin Skinner got 3 yeses, and the internet, which was still in its relatively early days as a viral machine, went wild. The audition clip spread like wildfire. It racked up over 50 million YouTube views, a staggering number for 2009, when going viral was still relatively new territory. People were sharing it with their mothers, their coworkers, and their friends who never watch reality TV. Kevin Skinner wasn't just a contestant anymore. He was a moment, a cultural touchstone, the chicken catcher who stopped America in its tracks. And he hadn't even won yet. So if the audition was that electric, if the whole country was already obsessed, what happened when Kevin kept going? Did he crumble under the pressure? Did the fairy tale hold together? Well, grab something to sip on, because the road to the finale is a story all by itself. The road to the crown, Vegas semifinals, and the million-dollar moment. Here's what people forget about competition shows like America's Got Talent. Winning isn't just about one great audition. It's a marathon. Week after week, you have to show up, perform under intense pressure, handle the scrutiny, manage the nerves, and somehow keep that original spark alive, even as the machine of television production swirls around you. For Kevin Skinner, every round was a test. Vegas week, notoriously grueling, notoriously the place where promising contestants fall apart, did not break him. The semifinals, where the competition sharpens and the stakes escalate, did not rattle him loose. He kept showing up. He kept singing. He kept being Kevin. And that authenticity, that refusal to become a packaged performance, is what the public kept responding to. His performance of Tennessee Whiskey during the competition became one of the most talked-about moments of that entire season. It was a song that suited him perfectly, a slow, soulful country ache of a melody that let his voice do exactly what it does best: linger, resonate, make you feel like someone just put words to something you've been carrying around for years. Throughout the competition, Kevin was remarkably consistent about what he wanted from all of this. In interviews, he kept coming back to the same themes: making music and taking care of his family. He wasn't playing the fame game. He wasn't strategizing about record deals and Hollywood connections. He just wanted to sing and go home to the people he loved. That simplicity was, paradoxically, one of the most powerful things about him. In an era of carefully curated celebrity personas, Kevin Skinner was a man with no persona at all. What you saw was what you got, and America loved him for it. When the finale arrived, the night of nights, the moment of moments, Kevin Skinner stood on that stage and waited. And then the announcement came. Kevin Skinner was the winner of America's Got Talent Season 4. The prize, $1 million and a headline Las Vegas show. For a chicken catcher from Graves County, Kentucky, for a man who had been grinding through an ordinary life with extraordinary talent hidden inside him, it was, by any measure, the kind of thing that only happens in movies. But here's the thing about movies. They end at the triumph, and they live happily ever after, unless there's going to be a sequel. But real life? Real life keeps going. No sequels. And that's where things start to get complicated. Because what happens after the confetti falls and the cameras pack up? What does overnight fame actually do to a man who never asked for fame in the first place? The answer, it turns out, is a lot more than anyone was reporting. In the immediate aftermath of his AGT win, Kevin Skinner's career was, by any reasonable metric, thriving. Between 2010 and 2012, he performed approximately 50 shows per year. That is not a small number. That is a working musician's full-time life. Travel, rehearsals, sound checks, meet and greets, late nights, early mornings, and everything in between. Kevin was out there, delivering on the promise of that audition night, performing for fans who had fallen in love with that voice and wanted more of it. He also became involved in charitable work during this period. This is the detail that the clickbait narratives always rush past, but it matters because it tells you something important about Kevin Skinner's character. Fame, for a lot of people, becomes a platform for more fame, a feedback loop of self-promotion. Kevin used his platform to give back, to show up for communities and causes that needed the spotlight turned on them rather than on him. The fan response during this period was warm and genuine. Kevin had earned a following that wasn't just casual viewers clicking a viral video. These were people who felt a connection to him, people who saw their own lives reflected in his story. The working-class kid who made good, the unpolished talent that the industry overlooked and the public refused to. He was authentic. He was accessible. He was, by all accounts, a genuinely good guy who was trying to navigate an industry that is, let's be honest, not always kind to genuinely good guys. And for a while, for a glorious couple of years, it looked like Kevin Skinner had figured it out. But behind the scenes, something was shifting. Because here's the question nobody was asking publicly, but everyone who pays attention to these stories knows is coming. What happens when the machine stops? When the bookings slow down? When the calls get less frequent? When the spotlight that once felt suffocating starts to feel terrifyingly like it's simply gone? The unraveling, depression, isolation, and the slow fade. By the mid-2010, Kevin Skinner had largely disappeared from public view. Not in a dramatic, headline-generating public meltdown way, just quietly. The bookings became less frequent. The media appearances dried up. The man who had once been on the lips of every America's Got Talent fan became a footnote, then a memory, then a whatever happened to search query. And the truth of what was happening behind that slow fade? It was genuinely painful. Kevin Skinner has spoken about struggling with depression following his time in the spotlight. This is not a small thing to acknowledge. Depression, real, clinical, weight-of-the-world depression, is not a weakness. But in a culture that treats fame as the ultimate validation, admitting that the fame itself was part of the problem? That takes a particular kind of courage. Think about what Kevin Skinner's life trajectory actually looked like from the inside. One moment, you're catching chickens in Kentucky, grinding through an ordinary life. The next, you're on national television, millions of people screaming your name, $1 million check in your hand. The next, those same millions of people have moved on to the next contestant, the next season, the next viral moment. And you're left standing there, trying to figure out who you are when the cameras aren't rolling. The transition from intense public attention to relative obscurity is something almost no one talks honestly about. The entertainment industry, with its relentless forward momentum, doesn't leave a lot of space for people to process what that whiplash actually feels like. You're expected to either keep climbing or disappear gracefully. There's no support structure for the ones who fall somewhere in between. Kevin Skinner also dealt with vocal strain during this period. For a singer, this is particularly devastating. Your voice is not just your instrument. It's your identity, your livelihood, your primary means of communicating the thing that made you remarkable in the first place. Vocal issues can spiral quickly from a practical problem into an existential one. The isolation that followed his withdrawal from the public eye was significant. Kevin stepped away from the media circus, and in doing so also stepped away from a lot of the external validation and community that the performance circuit had provided. The shift inward, necessary, perhaps, for genuine healing, can also be profoundly lonely. This is the part of the Kevin Skinner story that deserves to be told with care, because it isn't unique to him. Across the landscape of reality television winners and one-season sensations, this pattern repeats with heartbreaking regularity. The show finds them. The show elevates them. The show moves on. And the person is left to pick up whatever pieces remain. Kevin, to his credit, did not simply collapse under the weight of all of this. He did something that required genuine strength. He sought help. And that decision, to reach out, to seek therapy, to prioritize his own healing over maintaining an image, That is where the real story of Kevin Skinner starts to become something genuinely worth talking about. But it also raises the question that's been quietly sitting underneath all of this. What does Kevin Skinner actually think about everything that happened to him? What has he said now that the silence has finally broken? Kevin Skinner sought therapy. Now, in the world of country music, in the world of working-class masculinity and stoic resilience, admitting that you need professional mental health support is still, in many communities, considered a radical act. Kevin did it anyway. And what emerged from that period of therapy and personal work was not a triumphant comeback narrative crafted by a PR team. It was something quieter and in many ways more meaningful. A man who had done the hard internal work of understanding who he was, what he valued, and what a sustainable, authentic life actually looked like for him. He began to disentangle his sense of self-worth from external validation, from ticket sales and YouTube views, and whether or not a record label was returning his calls. He reconnected with the things that had made music meaningful to him in the first place, before America's Got Talent reframed it as a competition and a career and a brand. Gradually, Kevin began re-engaging with music on his own terms, not the machine-driven, schedule-packed pace of 50 shows a year, but something more human, more sustainable. The kind of connection between a singer and an audience that doesn't require arena-scale production values, just honesty, presence, and that voice. The healing process, by all accounts, was not linear. It never is. But Kevin Skinner, the chicken catcher from Kentucky, who stumbled into one of the biggest spotlights in American entertainment and then had to figure out how to survive it, was doing the work. And here's what strikes me about that. How many people in his position don't do the work? How many retreat into bitterness or substance abuse or a perpetual state of grievance about what the industry took from them? Kevin Skinner chose a harder and more honest path. But look, let's be real with each other. The question everyone is actually asking, it isn't just, how is Kevin doing emotionally? It's bigger than that. It's the question that has been sitting underneath every single whatever happened to the video about this man. Does Kevin Skinner regret winning? Does he regret stepping onto that stage? And what does he think about the way his story has been told and retold without him in the room, breaking the silence? Here is where we have to be careful, because the internet is littered with Kevin Skinner finally speaks content that takes enormous creative liberties with what he has and hasn't actually said. And in a story about a man who has been consistently misrepresented by the machinery of viral media, the least we can do is be honest about what the verified record actually shows. What Kevin Skinner has made clear across the various moments when he has engaged with the public and media in recent years is this: he does not regret the music. He never stopped loving the music. The music was always the real thing, and the music remains the real thing. America's Got Talent was a vehicle that brought his voice to millions of people who might never have heard it otherwise. And that, the connection, the reaching out across distance and difference, and all the things that divide people, that he is genuinely grateful for. What he has also made clear is that fame, as a commodity, as an end in itself, never meant much to him. His motivations before the show were simple: make music, support his family. His motivations after the show, after the depression, after the therapy, after the slow and difficult work of rebuilding, remain essentially the same. He is a man who found his way back to his own values because they were strong enough to survive everything the spotlight threw at them. He has spoken about the importance of authenticity, of not allowing the entertainment industry's version of who you should be to override your own sense of who you are. For Kevin Skinner, the most important thing was never the $1 million or the Las Vegas headline slot, as remarkable as those things were. It was the voice, the song, the moment when music connects two strangers and makes them feel less alone. That at its core, is what Kevin Skinner has always been about. And at 52, that voice? Still remarkable. Still textured with that same deep, aching sincerity that stopped a skeptical AGT audience in its tracks 16 years ago. Time has not been unkind to Kevin Skinner's instrument. If anything, the years, the hard ones and the healing ones alike, have added something to it. A weight, a knowing. The sound of a man who has been through some things and come out the other side with his integrity intact. Now, here's the part of this story that I find genuinely fascinating and a little bit infuriating, if I'm honest. Because Kevin Skinner's silence over the years wasn't just personal. It was, in a very real sense, forced. By circumstances, yes, but also by something more systemic. Something that says a lot about what we do to people after we make them famous. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture here, because Kevin Skinner's story is not an anomaly. It is a pattern. America's Got Talent, like every major talent competition, operates on a specific economic logic. The show needs a winner each season. The winner generates enormous ratings, press coverage, and advertising revenue. The winner's story, particularly when it's as compelling as Kevin Skinner's, becomes content that the network uses across multiple platforms, driving viewers back to the show and to the brand. And then the season ends, and the machine turns to churning out the next season. And the previous winner is, essentially, on their own. The infrastructure that surrounded Kevin during his AGT run, the producers, the publicists, the stylists, the booking teams, the network support, evaporated with the season. He was handed a check and a headline slot and the goodwill of millions of Americans, and then largely left to figure out the music industry on his own. A music industry that by 2009 was already in significant upheaval due to the digital revolution, and that has historically been ruthless with artists who don't have powerful management in their corner. By no means is this a criticism of America's Got Talent specifically, it's an indictment of the entire ecosystem. The talent competition industrial complex finds people with extraordinary gifts, gives them a platform, extracts maximum value from their story, and then releases them back into a world that is not remotely equipped to support them, or vice versa. For someone like Kevin Skinner, without an industry network, without a management team that had been building his career for years, without the kind of savvy that comes from growing up in the entertainment business, the drop from the peak of AGT fame to the grinding reality of sustaining a music career was brutal. The depression he experienced wasn't just about personal psychology. It was a rational response to an irrational situation. A man had been told by one of the largest entertainment platforms in America that he was extraordinary, and then been shown by that same industry's behavior that extraordinary wasn't enough to guarantee support. And yet, Kevin Skinner did not become a cautionary tale. He became something more interesting than that. He became a man who refused to let the industry's indifference define him. So what does that look like in practice? What is Kevin Skinner's life actually like now? Life after the storm. Kevin Skinner is 52 years old. He is not a Las Vegas headliner. He is not charting on Billboard. He is not the subject of profiles in Rolling Stone or performances on late-night television. By the metrics that the entertainment industry uses to measure success, Kevin Skinner is not what most would call a conventional success story in 2025. But here's the thing, and this is the part that the finally break silence clickbait completely misses. Kevin Skinner appears to be genuinely at peace. He has returned to music on his own terms, performing when he wants to, for audiences that appreciate what he brings to a stage without the relentless pressure of maintaining a public image or satisfying an industry's appetite for content. He is connected to his community, to his family, to the Kentucky roots that were always the bedrock of who he is. His social media presence, never prolific, always personal, reflects a man who has found a way to be public on his own terms. When he engages with fans, it is with the same directness and lack of artifice that defined his AGT audition. No carefully crafted posts designed to maximize engagement, just a real person talking to real people about real things. The therapy he sought during his darker years did what good therapy does. It helped him build a life that is genuinely his own, rather than a life built around other people's expectations of who he should be. At 52, Kevin Skinner seems to understand something that many people, famous and otherwise, spend their whole lives chasing, that the music was always the point. Not the fame, not the $1 million, not the judge's approval, or the viral video counts, or the headline in Las Vegas. The music, the voice, the moment of connection, that was always the point. But here's what I want to leave you with, because I think it's the most important question this whole story raises. What do we owe the people we make famous? What responsibility do we, as audiences, as consumers of entertainment, as the people who click the viral videos and vote in the competitions and make the ratings, have toward the human beings at the center of all of it? Over 50 million people watched Kevin Skinner's AGT audition on YouTube. 50 million. That is an extraordinary number. That is more people than live in many countries. Each of those views represents a moment of genuine connection. A stranger, somewhere in the world, being moved by a chicken catcher from Kentucky with a voice full of heartache and honesty. Those 50 million views translated into a competition win. $1 million. And what should have been a launching pad for a long and sustainable career. And yet, somewhere between the confetti, the check, and the Las Vegas spotlight, the story went sideways. Not because Kevin Skinner wasn't talented enough or didn't work hard enough, but because the system that elevated him was never designed to sustain him. We live in a culture that is addicted to the discovery moment, the audition, the underdog revelation, the tear-jerking backstory, and the triumphant performance. We consume these moments voraciously, and then we move on, always hungry for the next one. What we don't talk about, what we systematically avoid talking about, is the cost of that consumption, the real human cost paid by real human beings who trusted us with their vulnerability and their talent and their stories. Kevin Skinner trusted the America's Got Talent stage with his. He gave the whole country a piece of himself, his roots, his struggles, his voice, his hope. And the country received it with open arms. For a season. And then we forgot. The fact that Kevin Skinner spent years in depression and isolation following his time in the spotlight is not just a sad footnote to a feel-good story. It is an indictment of how we treat the people whose stories we consume for entertainment. It is a reflection of an industry, and yes, an audience, that is very good at celebrating people and very bad at actually taking care of them. Kevin Skinner's silence over the years wasn't just his. It was ours, too. We stopped asking about him. We stopped paying attention. We moved on to the next audition, the next season, the next viral moment. And we left a good man to find his way through the aftermath alone. He did find his way. Against the odds, and with a lot of hard internal work, Kevin Skinner found his way back to himself. That is genuinely something. That deserves to be recognized as the remarkable thing it is. At 52 years old, Kevin Skinner, from Graves County, Kentucky, the chicken catcher who stopped America cold with a guitar and a voice full of truth, is not a tragedy. He is not a warning. He is not a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame, though there is plenty in his story to learn from. He is a man who had something real, a genuinely extraordinary voice, and a genuinely authentic soul, and who navigated the glittering, brutal machinery of entertainment stardom without losing either of those things. That is harder than it sounds. Most people don't manage it. The silence? It was never really silence. It was just Kevin Skinner doing the quiet, unglamorous, completely necessary work of living his actual life, of healing what needed to heal, of returning to the music on his own terms. And the voice that comes out of that process? That voice that still carries all of Graves County and all those years and all that hard-won peace? That voice is still worth listening to. Maybe now, 16 years after a nervous man in a baseball cap walked out onto a stage and changed everything, we'll actually take the time to hear it. If you found this story meaningful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And drop in the comments, what do you think the entertainment industry owes to the people it makes famous? Let's have that conversation. Subscribe for more stories about the real people behind the headlines, the ones who deserve more than a footnote.